Hey guys, so today I'm going to be doing another video having to do with birth charts, and I'm going to be talking about the houses, kind of like an intro to it, a beginner's guide to the houses of the birth chart. So if you watched last week's video, I think it was just an intro to a birth chart. I kind of went over how a birth chart is broken down, just in a pretty basic way, in case anybody watching, is newer to astrology. That's kind of what it was intended for. So this video is sort of the same thing. I'm just going to be going over an intro of like what the houses are in a birth chart and the different kinds of houses. So the first thing you kind of want to be aware of is a birth chart is primarily broken up into planets, signs, and houses. There's other things going on as well, but those are the three main things that make up a birth chart. So you want to just kind of separate those and know what each of them kind of mean. So the planets are the energy of your birth chart. They're kind of like the what of the birth chart. So then you have your signs, which are the character of the birth chart, and that kind of represents the how of the birth chart. And then you have your houses. And your houses are the circumstance of the birth chart. It represents the where of the birth chart. So the what, the how, and the where. And again, the energy, the characteristics, and the circumstances. So each birth chart, is divided, like I said, up into 12 different houses. Now each birth chart might not look perfectly, separated. It depends on a number of things, but you could see in my birth chart, the first house is looks a lot larger, and that's just because there's so many planets in there. It has to be bigger to kind of fit them all. They're not always the same size. It just kind of depends. A birth chart is also broken up into 4 different kind of major points. So you have the ascendant, which is what is rising over the horizon at the time of your birth, and a lot of you probably know your ascendant or your rising sign. On the exact opposite side of the birth chart, you have your descendant, and then on the top of the birth chart near the 10th house, you have your midheaven. And on the bottom of the birth chart, kind of closer to the 4th house, you have your Imam Koli. I don't usually say that, I just call it the IC, or it can also be referred to as the Nadir. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing any of this. So now you have each house and you separate it into 3 categories, or it can also be called 3 quadratures. And those are as follows. There's the angular houses, the succedent houses, and the cadent houses. The angular houses are called that because they're on an angle. They are the 1st house, the 4th house, the 7th house, and the 10th house. The angular houses match up with the cardinal signs of the zodiac, and they represent achievement or prominence, and they're known to be the most powerful houses in the birth chart. We then have the succedent houses, which follow the angular houses, so succedent, they succeed them. Now, those have to do with the fixed signs of the zodiac, and those are the 2nd house, the 5th house, the 8th house, and the 11th house. They have a lot to do with stability, willpower, fixedness, and a lot to do with emotional natures and desires, as well as individual, wants or desires or needs. Lastly, you have the cadent houses, which go along with the mutable signs of the zodiac. So those are the 3rd house, the 6th house, the 9th house, and the 12th house. They are called the cadent because they kind of fall away. They have a lot to do with, their mentally active houses, ideas, communication. It has a lot to do with the energy of the mind. Another way that people tend to break up the houses, some people call it the 4 trinities, other people just break it up and call it the houses of each of the things I'm going to go over. So you can have the houses that represent the trinity of life, or some people just call that the houses of life. You have houses that represent the trinity of association or relationships, and again, some people just call this the houses of relationships. You have the trinity of wealth or the houses of wealth. Also, that can be called the trinity of temporal or possessive thoughts. You also have the trinity of psychism, or the houses of endings. So the trinity of life or the houses of lives are houses 1, 5, and 9. Trinity of association or relationships or the houses of relationships are 3, 7, and 11. Trinity of wealth or houses of wealth are houses 2, 6, and 10. Or trinity of psychism or houses of endings are houses 4, 8, and 12. So now I'm just going to go over the ruler of each of the houses. This is pretty, I think most of you guys probably can figure this out, but just in case, I want this to be, a good description of what the houses are and breaking them down, for those of you who might be newer to astrology or just really have never been sure. But the ruler of the 1st house is Aries, and that has to do with the self. The 2nd house is Taurus, and that has to do with possessions. 3rd is Gemini, and that has to do with communication. The 4th house is Cancer, and that has to do with home. The 5th house is Leo, and that has to do with creativity. The 6th house is ruled by Virgo, and that has to do with service. The 7th house is ruled by Libra, and that has to do with partnerships. The 8th house is ruled by Scorpio and has to do with regeneration. The 9th house is ruled by Sagittarius and has to do with mental exploration. The 10th house is Capricorn and has to do with career. The 11th house is Aquarius and has to do with hopes. And the 12th house is Pisces and it has to do with self-undoing. Like a tongue twister for me. So that is just a completely basic breakdown of the houses, the different kinds, kind of what each of them have to do with. So I'm going to start doing videos on each of the houses and go into a much, more in-depth description of what each of the houses have to, what each of the houses stand for, what it means to have placements in the houses, and I'm going to be starting obviously with the first house. But yeah, so that is pretty much it. I will see you in my next video, which will be a weekly tarot reading. Also, guys, I just wanted to say really quickly, so if you want to reach out to me, if you have, a lot of people reach out to me with questions about like personal relationships. That's the like number one kind of question I get. But anything having to do with astrology, or whatever you might have a question for me for, feel free to reach out to me, but I would really prefer if you contacted me through the app Instant Go. They reached out to me and I actually really liked the idea of their app. Basically, you just message me on there, and you would have to pay, but it'd be a very small amount just to ask me a question. And the reason I'm doing this is because honestly, like if I'm being completely honest, people will message me on like Instagram, email, Snapchat, all these different social media accounts, and first of all, it's all over the place. Secondly, a lot of people will message me really, really long messages, and I unfortunately like don't have the time to answer them, just for complete like free. But a lot of people reach out and just want me to answer, a very extensive question, just out of my own time, and they get angry if I don't respond right away. I've had people get upset with me. So unfortunately, I just can no longer like take questions on my Instagram, unless it's like a one sentence, one answer kind of question. That's different. But if it's like anything more than a sentence, like if you could just use this app, that would be amazing. It's free to download. I'm on there, and I will put the link down below so that you guys can easily access that. If you have no questions for me, then obviously this isn't relevant, but in the future, I'm just going to be reminding people that that would be the best way to contact me from this point forward. That way, it's beneficial to both of us, and I would definitely answer your questions. It's just, I feel bad having to do it. Like, I really do. I wish I could just answer everybody's questions for free, but I just don't have the time to do that, unless it's part of my job. So I hope that makes sense. I hope I don't seem like I'm being ridiculous, but yeah, definitely get that app if you want to ask me a question. Again, it's very cheap. I think I'll charge like $2 a question pretty much. And I will definitely do my best to give you the most extensive, best answer I will. I take it very seriously, and I really want to have the time to read through your questions and give you the best answer that I can. So that's where I'm coming from. I hope you guys get that. Oh yeah, definitely check out that app in the info below. Like, how many times am I going to say it? But yes, I will see you in my next video, and as always, have a good day or night.